You don't want to start over, Tony?
No,
Yeah.
I don't. Okay, we're recording now. So go ahead, Carol.
All right, everyone. Good morning. I'm Carol Rademacher, Contract Services at MDOT. And hi, Chuck. I haven't seen you in years. So good to
Hey,
see
Carol.
all your faces. We have a short presentation, and then we can open it up for any questions that you have. We have almost all the UBR team members, unbalanced bid review team members on. We're missing Eric Kind, and we have Kim Farland, who is the analyst that kind of, she's got the responsibility of coordinating it, the process. So with that being said, welcome unbalanced bid review process, and I will get started. So today we're going to talk about who is on the unbalanced bid review, and I'm going to start calling it UBR. Team members, unbalanced bids defined, history, how did we get here, what prompted this process, and how long have we been doing this? And then Larry Strzelka is going to go into the rest of the presentation, the contract selection process. How do we select contracts that go through the UBR process? And then what we do, how do we screen them? How do we check them? And then which ones go into the field for their review and which ones come back to the UBR team for their review. And then we're going to talk about a letter that we have used in the past as a clarification to our contractors to ask for additional information. And then we're going to show you some statistics about what we've done over the last years with regard to UBR. All right, so who is on the UBR team? It's not the individual, it's a position. We have me, the Contract Services Division Administrator, the Engineer of Design, Kristen, the Engineer of Construction Field Services, Jason Gutting. We have 2 region engineers or a designee, and right now we have Eric Kind and Del Kirkby on the team. And once 3 of these 5 approve it, it is considered approved through UBR, and we release the project as long as there's nothing else holding up the project. If it's just UBR, then 3 votes to move forward releases the project. All right, so our spec book, section 101.03 defines what is a mathematically unbalanced bid and what is a materially unbalanced bid. Mathematically is essentially if a price does not reflect the what we consider to be reasonable actual cost of labor, equipment, materials, plus profit, overhead, and indirect costs. So that would be mathematical. Material is bids that would generate a reasonable doubt that award to the low bidder would not result in the lowest ultimate cost to the department. And when it is clear that a materially unbalanced bid exists, we do reject the bids. History, 23 CFR 635114, and we put in some excerpts of that in here. So back in 2008, FHW and MDOT agreed that we would conduct a 1-year pilot study so we would be in compliance with 23 CFR 635114. And there's some excerpts from that. Paragraph C requires the state DOT shall examine the unit price bids of the apparent low bidder for reasonable conformance with the estimate. A bid with extreme variations from the estimate or where obvious unbalancing of unit prices has occurred should be thoroughly evaluated. Paragraph D says where obvious unbalanced bid items exist, the state DOT's decision to award or reject a bid shall be supported by justification. A bid found to be mathematically unbalanced but not materially unbalanced may be awarded, and I did speak to that in the prior slide. When a low bid, and paragraph E, when a low bid is determined to be both mathematically and materially imbalanced, appropriate steps to protect the federal interest must be put in place. So in 2009 and 2010, we did a pilot of this UBR process. And during that 1 year, we had 353 contracts reviewed with no items during that year identified as being materially unbalanced. And then FHWA in 2010 approved our UBR process guidelines. And now I'm going to turn it over to Larry. And Larry, you may be on mute.
The way we select the contracts is pretty simple. We take 1/3 of all the projects in the letting, and those are for the UBR. If by chance there are some projects that have an engineer's estimate of equal to or greater than 5 million, we'll select those as well. And then after the letting, if a project comes in at over $5 million, say the engineer's estimate was 4.8 million and the bids came in at 5.1 million, then we would select that one as well. And infrequently, we might have a field office or a local agency asking for a project to go through the unbalanced bid review. So that's another way the contract is selected. Can switch the slide, Carol.
I am trying to switch the slide. There we go.
So after the letting, all projects go through the proposal review. Go through a proposal review check, and in this we're looking at items that are, for instance, mobilization. If mobilization is capped at 10%, if for some reason the contractor bids 12%, then CSD goes through and we would correct that and put it down to 10%. So we're looking at errors, bid errors mostly, and that's kind of outside of the UBR process, but it's something that we do initially for all projects. The next step is for those projects that were selected for the UBR, we go through and we run the bid item analysis report, and that we're looking for. We use Ashtoware project for that, and we're looking for line items that are equal to or greater 15%, and that the extended bid price is over $10,000. We'll also look and see how much of a quantity change of a pay item would change the bid ranking. And then we use this, to determine, whether the low bidders' bids on the pay items are significantly lower or higher than the other bids, and whether there may be a quantity error on a project.
Hey, Larry, this is Brett. I got a question on this slide just because I couldn't figure out the slide number. So I thought, well, you're right here on that bullet point extended bid price. Is that greater than or equal to 10,000 of the engineer's estimate, or all items that are greater than?
All items.
All items. Okay.
Well, the contractor's bid.
Okay. Thank you.
That's exclusive of the engineer's estimate. You can go to the next slide, Carol. Once the projects have been screened, CSD identifies the projects and the items that need to go to the field for review. And we instruct the field office to review those flag plan quantities to make sure that there weren't any miscalculations, to make, to determine, what, okay, did we miss a quantity here, that would cause which would cause a discrepancy or cause the bid to be plus or minus 15% over. And then we also ask them to look at the whole project. Once this is complete, the report's sent back to CSD, and then we'll forward that to the unbalanced bid review team. Okay, once the field document or the field review document's received, we send it to the UBR team, and it's discussed. They'll vote to approve the release of the item. They'll say, okay, this is legitimate. There may be a discussion, or they may request additional information from the field. And if they requested additional information, it kind of goes through CSD. So we're the point people on that. Okay, and then pretty infrequently, if there's still some doubt as to why the bids came in a certain way, we have infrequently asked for a clarification letter to determine, are we both on this? Is the contractor and MDOT on the same page? And I think we cite the 2012 spec book about taking advantage of errors or omissions in the contract. We just want to make sure that we're all speaking the same language. And then I think the next is some statistics.
Maybe before you get into that, Larry, just to kind of emphasize, and in particular, this kind of happened on I-69. When we go back and ask the field for more information, in some cases, that's an issue of, can you validate, is there a quantity error, and how significant is that? And really understanding that. MDOT doesn't like to reject all bids any more than contractors want us to reject all bids, right? We that's like the last thing we ever want to do. But we also, I guess the really last thing we want to do is award a contract that has a material imbalance, particularly if that's going to affect something else, right? Not only does it affect the price of the end price of the contract, but when it can affect potentially who the low bidder is, that just creates a whole lot of problems for us and, quite frankly, for the bidding community. And so part of what took so long on I-69 was checking and double checking. Okay, if the quantity error was wrong, why was that? Getting a third opinion or a second opinion from a independent estimator. We just are really trying to do our due diligence before we take drastic action. So I just want to be really clear why it took a long time. It's not something we don't like to take a long time. Obviously, the UBR committee and the folks doing all this work as quickly as they can on stuff because we want to release bids, but we also want to make sure we're completely on when we're making decisions.
Yeah, and I think to Tony's point, I think the UBR statistics page here, you go to the next one, kind of reflect that. We've only rejected 2 projects in the last 3 years based on the UBR.
Hey, Larry, I want to put just a little finer point even on what Tony said. And so when there are quantity changes, we end up having to use the contractor's bid unit cost. That's how we do the evaluation. We actually have to, whatever that contractor put in for that unit cost, we have to assess it, assuming the new quantity, and then looking at the overall bid. So I just wanted to make sure that that point was
Right.
very clear. Whatever the contractor put in for their unit cost, when we do this assessment, if there's a quantity change, we use the number that they bid.
Right.
So I got a question on that. I mean, I don't have a better method or process to evaluate that, but that doesn't seem to make a lot of sense to me. Like if I'm, contractor and the quantity is 10,000 and I, do my calculations and it's $5 per unit or whatever, but then there was a bust in that and it's really 20,000. Well, my price probably is not going to be $5 per unit. So like I said, I don't have a better way of doing it, and so I don't want to poke holes in it, but I just like that doesn't make a lot of sense. So hopefully, I guess I'm curious.
I'll explain that, because if we were to not reject all bids, the risk would fall to the department. And that's why, going back to the original definition of a material unbalanced bid, is that it would not result in the, what was it again, the lowest cost to the contract. So let's say, for example, your example, the quantity in the plan was 10,000 and the contractor bid $5. If another bidder bid $1 on that and the quantity doubled, our exposure would be based on what that contractor bid, because that's what we'd end up paying. Whatever that unit cost was at time of bid is what we would end up paying. So the contractor that bid $5, his cost would go up double or 5 times compared to what the person that only bid $1 was. So it really depends on that definition of material bid, what the outcome would be. We do that assessment prior to award when we know that there was a potential change in quantities, so that we don't get in a situation where we awarded it and now we're paying more than we otherwise would have. And I could probably explain that a lot better if I had a marker and a whiteboard in my hand. But that's really what it comes down to, is the material issue. If we think that because of this error, this change, the final contract price would be higher, it basically flips who the low bidder was. That's what determines a material issue. Does that make sense at all? Because I'm, like I said, I think I could draw it better than I could talk it.
No, that makes total sense, like the actual scenario, whatever, but it just like I said, I don't have a better solution for it. It just seems like kind of throwing the baby out with the bathwater, getting rid of everything on a huge project or whatever, because there was, a bust on one quantity or whatever. And like I said, I don't have a better methodology to follow. But I appreciate the explanation.
Great.
So looking at the stats, we probably review a little bit over, right around 35% of the projects that we let. And right around 7% of the projects we let are sent to the field. So. And that is it.
So what other questions you guys have? That's still fairly high level. I guess, are there other examples we can walk through or something to help you be able to explain this with your members?
Well, I guess there are a couple questions that I have. I know you said it's a variable process and you work as quickly as possible on it, but do you have an internal time frame you try to adhere to? Just like on the I-69 project, for example, like that, they're just was no information week after week, and obviously the questions were rolling in. So, if we hit the 10-day mark, is that should then we be inquiring and not before? Or I mean, do you?
I think the last bar on that chart that Larry had up there showed the average days for review, and I think it was 12 or 13 days. I don't know that we have a particular target, but we're always trying to get things turned around as quickly as possible. But I would say if it's above average, then it's fine to start asking.
Sure.
Not that we're going to have a great answer for you. We're going to just tell you it's still under unbalanced bid review, but I start asking questions. Why isn't that released yet? As well.
Mm-hmm.
This is Kim Farland. I work in contract services and I do the initial UBR and then send it out to the field. When I identify items or if one's just going out to the field because of the $5 million threshold, I ask for it back from the field in 7 days. That gives them enough time, to take a look at it. And usually everyone stays within that parameter. Sometimes, like this last project, once they start their review, things kind of snowball, and then it's okay, these items or these quantities were off, and then it causes them to look deeper into other quantities, and that kind of contributed to the length of time as we kept peeling off layers. It's like, oh, well, now this, and then, well, this leads to that. So this was a really unusual one. Usually when you look at the average amount of days of how long it takes to review, this was really outside of that norm. And it was just because of that. It was the EUAC, it was these, the additional quantities, and it impacted one section bid versus the other. There was a lot that went into it. So everyone was pushing, everyone knew that this was one we wanted to get reviewed, but we wanted to make sure that everything was accurate.
So I guess I have a question on the kind of the call it APB process, but that EUAC factor that you just mentioned, like, is this the same group that's calculating that? Like, who does that work?
Greg might be able to answer this better than I do, but the EUAC, I mean, the actual formula and stuff comes out of the life cycle cost process, right? And that's done by the pavement unit in field services. And I think I guess the contract folks can help with this, but I mean, it's just you plug the numbers in and it kicks out the results. So I don't think there's a whole lot more to the analysis of that, but as far as the formula being set up, that comes out of the life cycle process.
Yep, and that's coordinated between our innovative contracts folks and our pavement folks. And then again, it's just kind of plug and play with that formula once the bids come in.
I think at issue though is when, particularly in this case, because we discovered the material unbalancing. When you plug the numbers as they were bid and then as they would have been computed or the extended price with corrected quantities, it would have changed the result of the formula. And but if we had the changed quantities correct in the plans, would the bidders have bid it that way? Right? That's the thing. And so we want to make sure it's a fair, level playing field for bidding, and that's why in the end we end up rejecting that.
So I think with this last one, especially, one of the things that was really hard is people were trying to understand why things were rejected and what caused that. Is there any way to give more information when you are rejecting all? I mean, I know like MDOT did contact us and kind of let us know a limited amount, but I think if there was a way to have a better understanding, that would help a lot.
Yeah, I mean, I'll let others respond to this too. It's a careful balance because if you get into too much detail, now we're revealing stuff about the bidder's bid, right? And that's the part where we don't want to cross that line. Obviously, when it is re-advertised, as it is now, we correct the quantities. So, and we try to highlight, all right, these are the quantities that we feel we had an error in, and so that we can draw attention to that for the bidders. But it's kind of a tough balance. I understand what you're saying, Rochelle, and we can give some thought to that. I don't know if Kristen or Brad have any thoughts on that, but because they usually make the calls.
Yeah, thank you, Tony. This is Kristen. Yeah, we are those memos, are very similar format. They are very structured and they're very targeted for information. I mean, I guess we can take that feedback back and look at what we would consider adding, but we are short and sweet, to not over reveal, which there's a risk of, I think. Yeah, I guess that's what I can say. I don't know, Brad, if you have anything else you would add to that.
No, it's kind of intentional that it's
Right.
that way, that it's really to the point and not revealing anything that might have been revealing something in someone's bid or what might happen going forward. So it's kind of done on purpose.
Yeah, I mean, I to Rochelle's point, I agree that, I think some more information came out a couple days after the letter. Of course, the letter came out, everybody was there was no information in there other than they'd all been rejected. But later on, we found out some additional information about, quantity bust or whatever. So maybe just having that in there, which that information came out, obviously it's going to be known when it gets re-advertised. So maybe at that point, you don't know the quantity change, but at least this item was, determined to be a bust. I think that would answer a few more questions. Obviously, there's still going to be questions, but some food for thought, I guess.
Okay, we'll take that back and Kristen, you and I can chat about that.
Other questions or comments? I did see Steve joined from MCA, so.
Yeah.
Yes, thanks for the invite.
I mean,
Steve, you joined a little late. We are recording this session, so if we'll figure out a way to get the recording to y'all if you want to share it with your members.
Appreciate it. Thanks.
Yeah, I don't want to put anybody on the spot or whatever, and I don't know how long the process would take, but I mean, I'm more of a details kind of guy. I wouldn't mind seeing like the actual, detailed sausage making process, like how you actually step right on through it. Like I said, it's probably not this meeting, but just to like really, I don't know, hammers home better for me, just to like walk through either a past example, if that's possible, or make something up, just a couple items or whatever, if that's something that the department would consider at a later time.
Maybe we can take a job from a year ago where all the dust is settled on something and change a few of the numbers or whatever, but kind of walk through what, it's kind of like an example of it, right?
Right. If it's possible, without creating a bunch of extra work for somebody.
Sure.
I think we could create a dummy example that, would show the math and how things lay out pretty easily.
Yeah. I
Again,
think
I-69 was like the worst case scenario, right? Most of them don't fall into that category. So maybe we'd have a couple examples of kind of typical.
Right.
There's plenty that pass the review, right? And we just move forward.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that'd be helpful for me to be able to ask questions about, like thresholds and stuff like that. And when you start to get, worried and when what's good. So, but no, I think the general information provided was a step in the right direction for me to try to understand the process better. But I think one additional step to like really get into the sausage making process would be, I'd be interested in that. Not speaking for the others, but.
Okay, we'll have a team put that together.
And I see Dan's on now, so I don't know.
Oh, yes,
if he has any questions to ask.
Well, I think you got to be a little careful with what your last request was. because you don't want to set up parameters for contractors to use to push the limits without triggering. If the IRS tells you when they're going to audit you and you withhold $1 less and you don't get audited, is that a good thing? I mean, it's, you got to allow for judgment there, some level.
Yeah, I guess that's not the presentation that was made. The UBR process is done on a random basis. So I wasn't talking about that. I was talking about what the department's looking at to review those items. So they would still, you'd still have the same opportunity to get audited, regardless of what the thresholds in the UBR are. So.
Any other questions? Feedback? All right. Well, thank you for joining us. If, again, we'll try to figure out how to save the recording and forward it to you. And if that doesn't do it, or you're getting a lot more questions from your members, we can set up another session.
Okay, no, I appreciate that. Appreciate everybody's time to put this together, and on that more in-depth step through or whatever. I don't think I'll make myself a calendar reminder to follow up, but I don't think there's any, rush to do that. So obviously it's a busy time of season for everybody. So we can get to it when we get to it. Or if you guys have thoughts internally on when you could turn that around, we'd be more apt to follow whatever you guys lead on that. So, but again, thank you for putting all that together and presenting that information today.
Sure. I'm guessing probably a couple weeks, 2-3 weeks, maybe. If it's going to be longer than that, Brad or Kristen, I'll let you know. Okay. All right. Thank you, everyone. Have a good weekend.
Take care.
Thank you.
Bye.
Have a good one.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.